Hello again, and welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Rural Report. I am your Rural 2IC, and guess what? We did it. So, we are at the final day of National Preparedness Month, the month of September, the 30 days of prepping, 30 days of survival. So, for everybody, I know there's quite a few of you that stuck with me and watched the whole series, which I greatly appreciate. There was a lot of you that interacted in the comments and made really expert and top notch advice and really had fun with it, which is kind of what I was going for. So, hats off to you. I really want to make sure that I show my appreciation for you. If this is your first one, fear not. You're not missing out. At the end, somewhere over here, I'll have a card that you can go back and watch the entire series if you would like. But we did it. And again, I want to give a shout out to Little Rural, who's my 5 year old, who gave me the idea of doing this in a fun way and doing it in the form of ABCs. But there's not enough letters in order to do it. And so we had to get a little creative on the last couple of days, right? And so we did a few symbols, and if you look, today's symbol is kind of the forever symbol, right? It's what a lot of people associate it with. And there seems to be something right here. I don't know what that is. Piece of paper. Okay. Um, so I want to pose it into a little bit of a different thing. So when we talk about it, and a lot of people will say that it is kind of the forever. It's the eternity symbol. Well, there's been a lot of talk lately because apparently in the US government, they are trying to do a bunch of updated stuff to the continuity of government. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically in case there is some sort of mass event that, there's basically a guideline on who steps in, who takes that spot. Well, first of all, though, direction I want to go in this is, do you have continuity? If you have a mag, or even if you don't, maybe you're just a family, maybe it's you, your husband, your wife, some kids, maybe you're going to be forced into a last minute mag with some of your neighbors or whatever. Here's the thing though. Let's say that you've been preparing for quite a while. Let's say that you've got 10, 15, 20 people in your mag. Do you have continuity? You're going to go, all right, Bob is the leader, and Billy is going to be head of security, and Brandon is going to be head of medical, and Bubba is going to be in charge of food, and everybody's got their own little jobs. What happens when something happens to one of them? Who's next? Is you just going to figure it out when it happens? Or do we have a continuity plan? Do we have something set up that there's people that's already kind of cross trained, or people that already have some talents and things in those areas, that if the guy in security no longer is able to do it, he's incapacitated for whatever reason, somebody else may not be at his level of experience or whatnot, but they have experience, they can step into that role instead of having it to where some sort of event happens and now all of a sudden everybody's got to try and figure it out. And that can lead to disagreements and negativity and even some really bad, unfortunate confrontations. Why not just set it up now? Governments all over the world do it, and it's not just governments. Military uh, organizations, different companies and things have different continuity. Why don't we have it? Has anybody ever thought about that? I'm just curious. If you have it to where you have assigned roles, you know who's going to lead the group, you know who's going to kind of take different areas and whatnot. Do you have seconds, thirds, fourth, fifth? If we're talking like real horrible Hollywood style, bodies in the streets, things are burning, do we have continuity all the way down to the last member? And I get it. Maybe I'm going way too far out. I get that. But have you at least thought about it? And then if you haven't, I would encourage you to maybe at least think about it. But let's dial it back. Let's not get too heavy into that one. You can have continuity in everything else, and what I mean by that is How do you replenish? You're going to be using up resources. Okay. Uh, you don't have to worry too much about like air. Yes, I know you got air quality and things like that, but as long as there's some plants, you should have some air, and the sun's still shining. Water. Okay, where's your water source? Where's your backup water source? Where's your emergency water source? How are you going to filter all that? How are you going to carry it? How are you going to store it? Things like that. How do you have all that planned out? Do you have multiple different sources? Same thing with food. You can't just rely on what you have in your pantry. You can't rely on just what you're growing. Well, for the most part, most of us, you're not going to be able to just rely on what you grow. Maybe you already have an established homestead to where you have different livestock and you have different plants that are growing, fruit trees and berry bushes and all sorts of that. But what happens when you have a drought? And say a really, really bad drought? Are you capable enough to have the irrigation set up to where you're not going to lose anything or lose much? It doesn't take uh, a real bad drought before you start getting it to where you start getting poor outcomes with your plants, with your bushes, with your trees. Animals start to suffer. The yield starts scaling back. Maybe you don't get a yield at all. Maybe it's the other way. Maybe instead of a drought, maybe it's just a really, really harsh winter. There's a lot of things. Maybe you have some sort of an accident. Maybe you're storing all your food in the basement, and maybe in the middle of the night the house burns down. You know, and it's in the middle of winter, so all your food and then everything you stored away is gone. Maybe the barn burned down and all the animals got out, or they didn't make it out of the barn. It's wintertime. You're not going to be growing much. you know, what's your continuity of that? And I get it. There's going to be people that's going to be like, well, if it's that serious, then, you don't have to worry about it. And then I get it. Okay. To a certain extent, but that's not the mindset to have. If we can think about it now, then it gives us a chance. It gives us an opportunity that we can take advantage of to try and think. Maybe not necessarily actually put something into action, but at least we give the thought. We have the idea there. Maybe that idea needs fine tuned. Maybe it needs, extra consideration. Maybe we need to step back for a little bit and focus on something else and come back to it at a later date. But there's a lot when it comes to continuity, on replenishment, on the eternal of things. You've got to make sure that you're kind of focusing on all the things that you're going to need, because when we're talking about things like water, when we're talking about things like food, as long as you don't have a really, unfortunate event happen, you can grow, you can raise livestock, you can go forage, you can hunt, you can fish, you can trap, you can do a bunch of things. But what about medical supplies? How are you going to replace medical supplies? How are you going to get it to where you have something that is a pain reliever? Can you go forage for some or grow some? Uh, how do you know about what dosage to give? This isn't a pill that you read the back of the bottle and go, all right, it's a 150-pound person. They need 500 milligram. This isn't go out there and look at somebody and go, they're middle aged and X amount, so 3.5 leaves ought to do it. It takes some talent and it takes some skill, and really it takes a lot of experience to be able to do something like that. And it goes beyond that. How are you going to clean things? Make it to where if you have somebody that's got a opened wound, sterilization is going to be important. How are you going to, once you use up your alcohol and other things, what are you going to do to sterilize? How are you going to replace things like galls and things like that? And you can keep going with everything. How are you going to replace tooling? How are you going to replace clothing, blankets, repair items, repair materials? There's a whole list of basically everything that you have now that is uh, that you've bought and put away for prepping. and things that you haven't, things that you use every day and you don't even consider to prep, do you have backups? Do you have a way to repair it, a way to replace it, a way to make something out of scratch if everything falls through? This is the time that we do the PACE, the PACE. What is your primary? What's your alternative? What's your contingency? And what is your emergency? And really, I like to take and put an extra letter on the end of there of what's your last ditch effort? What's your Hail Mary? Okay, what's the one that you just, all right, all these failed. This has a 2% chance of working, but 2% chance is better than zero. So uh, I like to just take it an extra step. That's just me personally. You'd be surprised on how many people barely have a primary for food, water, shelter, fire, medical, all that, let alone trying to go through each one of those in the whole letters of PACE. So, what I want to do with this one, I want to drag this one out. So we'll wrap this up with this. What is your continuity for your planning, for your preps? How are you going to do replenishment? How are you going to make it to where you can make something, repair something, replenish it by growing or however? How are you going to do it? And go through each facet, each different category. Okay. It doesn't necessarily have to just be like food and water. It goes through everything. How are you going to replace it all? So hopefully, because the camera, apparently I touched on a touchy subject, so we're just going to end it there. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. I'll give you the challenge. Go down in the comment section below. Let me know, some different ideas about continuity when it comes to preparedness. But with that, I want to thank you guys for spending a little bit of time with me. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, all that fun YouTube things that you guys know all about. But I hope you guys have an amazing day. I hope you have a blessed day. Stay tuned because there's definitely more information to come. And with that, I want to remain united because we're all prepping in this together.